Hey guys, so as most of you know, I typically tend to do this video at the end of every single year / the beginning of every single year. So this year is going to be no different. We're going to be discussing the worst summonable sparkings that released throughout 2022. Now, this is going to be a bit different than prior years, because in prior years, I've done a top 10 list for the worst summonable sparkings released throughout the year. However, this year is going to be a bit different. So if we take a look at the total amount of summonable sparkings that we received this year compared to last year, in 2022, we received 27 summonable sparkings and 4 summonable ultras. For reference, in 2021, we received 40 summonable sparkings and 1 summonable ultra. So we received 13 less summonable sparkings this year than we did in the prior, well, this year being 2022, as we did in 2021. So for this video, I'm actually going to be doing a top 5 worst summonable sparkings as opposed to a top 10, just because if you look at the actual top 10 worst summonable sparkings, there are actually going to be some pretty good ones on the bottom of the list, and it just didn't feel correct to me. So I'm going to be making this into a top 5 list instead of a top 10 list. And even the top 5, like you could even look at some of the characters on the bottom of this list, and you could argue that some of them were actually not bad. So let's go ahead and start with number 5 on the list here. I guess as a conclusion to this intro here, the conclusion that I would make from just there being way less summonable sparkings this year, at least a lot of them were good quality wise, right? So I think what they did is they probably just sacrificed quantity for quality. A lot of these quote unquote bad sparkings were actually pretty good, I think. But you know, if it was up to me, I would hope that they would increase the output this year. So hopefully we end 2023 with more than 27 summonable sparkings, because that seems a little bit low to me. But let's go ahead and jump into number 5 and we'll start the list there. All right, so coming in at number 5 on the list of worst summonable sparkings of 2022, we have Green Kaioken Goku. So this guy, when he came out, this guy released in January. I think it was the end of January. He was in a pretty bad spot right away, just because the meta was pretty much revolving around mono purple. I think that was the most used team back then. And this guy, obviously being a green character, and he also, I believe he only had 30% reduced damage received, right? Let me just quickly double check this. Yeah, reduced damage received by 30%. Like, you compare that to now, we're getting free-to-play characters that have over 60% reduced damage received for a good reason. So this guy got caught by 1 blue card from Goku and Vegeta, and he was just dead. Like, there was no saving him. And they knew this too, so they gave him extra damage inflicted to purple characters, 50%. That is a lot. And then they gave him an extra 25% reduced damage received from purple characters, because they knew how ridiculous mono purple was, and they had to find a way to make this guy at least somewhat viable. I mean, he has some good portions to his kit. He has actual support for the whole team whenever he lands a strike card. He has his Vanish Restoration from his main ability. He's actually able to nullify cover change with his green card for 10 counts. So there's some good portions to this character. He has a lot of Vanish Gauge recovery, I believe. Where is that portion? Restores his own Vanishing Gauge by 70% when this character evades an enemy attack with a Vanishing Step, activates twice, which does catch a lot of people off guard. And I actually do think this guy's a pretty fun character to use, but it was just a really, really bad time for this character to release back, you know, right when mono purple was at its best. And I don't know, this character is good, but he didn't really have the strength that he needed at the time to really make an impact in the meta at all, especially with his team. So this is basically a Sun Family character, and back when this guy came out, I mean, you weren't really using Sun Family, because you were using Ultra Gogeta, you were using Future, you were using hybrids with the Sword of Hope Trunks, Mono Purple with the tag switch characters, movies was good. Sun Family really wasn't in the mix, right? I mean, you had Revival Gohan, who was okay. So there were some iterations of this guy on a Sun Family team with like Revival Gohan and stuff that you could make use of, but this guy just wasn't it when he released, unfortunately. He wasn't horrible, which is why he's only at number 5 on the list. And, you know, I think there's a pretty decent gap between this guy and like 4, 3, 2, and 1. So let's move on to number 4. This guy's number 5. Coming in at number 4 on the list, unfortunately, is going to be LF Bardock, who also released in January of this year. I would probably consider this guy the biggest L of a Legends Limited character release ever. His animations are really good. I think his LF animation is, by a lot of people, is considered to be one of the best in the game. And again, I have nothing against like the character model. I think his animations are good, but in terms of his kit and usability, when this guy first came out, I mean, a lot of people were very confused as to why a good portion of what this guy was trying to do was locked behind him having a dead ally. It's very weird, right? And the biggest question mark, honestly, I still don't have an answer to, is why does he gain endurance when you have a dead ally? Most of the time, the reason why endurance is so valuable is because you can use it to deter the enemy from using their rising rush against you, because they don't want to waste their rush on a character that has endurance. So when this Bardock gets endurance because an ally is dead, the enemy is not going to hesitate to use their rush to kill an enemy or to kill one of your characters, because they know that their rush is not going to get wasted from endurance. So this Bardock then grabbing endurance, it becomes a lot easier for your opponent to then just nullify that endurance with an ultimate, because obviously you have a lot less characters you can switch into to defend against that. So that is like one of the worst design flaws I've ever seen on a character, especially an LF premium character like this. One of the things to mention is his green card also does pick up a very, very massive buff. When there's a defeated battle member, he destroys 2 enemy cards and gets his vanish back by 60% 3 times. Dude, that, number one, that should not be only when there's a defeated battle member. And then number 2, that vanish restoration, why does that have a limit? Just make it permanent. Why does that have a limit on it? 60% vanish restoration is not good enough of an effect to be limited to 3 times. I think if it was like 70% vanish gauge, then sure, limit it to like 5 times, but that is not good enough to limit to 3 times. 60%? That barely is ever going to help. Like, I feel there's a lot of instances where 60% vanish restoration does nothing almost. I've mentioned many times how the difference between 60 and 70% is actually really, really big. But I mean, on a stop time green card like this, having a 60% vanish restoration ability locked to 3 times, that is bad. That is very bad. And then, yeah, let's go take a look at the portion of his kit that's locked behind having a dead ally. Applies the following effects itself when one allied character is defeated. Nullifies unfavorable element factors for damage sustained. That's permanent. That's actually a really good effect, but it should not be limited to just having a dead ally. And then restores own health by, yeah, there's endurance, the bottom portion there. So he gains type neutral defensively, type neutrality defensively, and then he gains endurance. I think the type neutrality defensively maybe would be okay if it was limited to having a dead ally. But you absolutely cannot have endurance be limited to when you have a dead ally. That is very dumb. Very, very dumb. I think because they gave the same mechanic to the yellow Kale and Caulifla, which is the no switching when he's hit by an attack. I feel like maybe they're overrating how good that is, because that yellow Kale and Caulifla was also horrible on release. So I don't know if that's a mechanic where like they're looking at that and they're like, oh, this character is really going to be really good with that ability. But like, I've never, like, sure, it's fine. It can be, actually, it could be very good in certain instances, especially when you're combining this character. I remember when this guy came out, I used him alongside Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, and what you would do is you would have this character get comboed, and then you would cover change with Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, and if the enemy had no vanish, they were locked in and had no vanish, and then you could just get a free blue card in with Gogeta, and it was really strong. But like, other than that specific scenario, like, who cares about the no switching for 3 counts? You have to really, you have to really mess up as the opponent for that to really matter in a lot of cases. So unfortunately, I don't think that's really that great of an ability. Certainly not good enough to where it's like you then have to be forced to limit this to having a dead ally only for it to activate. That is very dumb. So this guy actually ended up being so bad and so unused that they actually didn't bring him back a single time for like almost 10 months. And then when they did bring him back, they gave him a unique equipment. So this guy already has a unique equipment, and they just decided not, like, honestly, how would I have even changed him? Like, I think his unique equipment is good, and I think he's definitely much better now with it, but I feel like they could have even given him more. I would consider his unique equipment to be one of the best in the game, even. It's ridiculously good. And even with that unique equipment, he is still not, like, I hardly ever see this guy. Like, there's no one who's really using him. So just a very sad and unfortunate release. I'm really hoping they don't replicate this year. But yeah, LF Bardock at number 4. I wouldn't really expect Now, on next year's list, I will be very disappointed if we have another LF character on the worst summonable sparking list. Let's just hope that doesn't happen again. Coming in at number 3 on the list, we have Blue Tien. This is a very, very difficult character to evaluate. And there's 2 main reasons why I have this character on the list at number 3 in terms of worst summonable sparkings of 2022. The first thing is going to be this. He is on no teams. He's on Super Warrior. That is his only team. You guys think Super Warrior is good? That's his only team. He's basically on 0 teams. He has no tags. And so what that means for our friend Tien is it is basically limiting him to be relegated to the leader slot for every team he's on, which is not good. You don't want a unit that has to be in the leader slot. That's not very good, because typically you have a core of your team that, you know, you're all working off of to make the team more cohesive and just better overall. So for example, the Hybrid Saiyan team is relying on pure equips to do as much damage as the team does. Like that's the identity almost of the team is having the ridiculous equips, right? So a character like Tien just completely takes away that synergy from the team. And I think with this guy being a ranged character on top of the fact that he has no teams, like it's just like almost impossible. Look at the difference in his stats. Look at his blast attack compared to his strike attack. This game has literally focused on strike characters for a full year and a half straight with like almost no exceptions. And so when we get these one in a blue moon ranged characters, especially one with like Tien that has no teams at all, how is he expected to do well on any team? Because like he's hurting the team almost, because he can't really contribute to what the team wants to be doing, which in 9 out of 10 instances is going to be, you know, strike damage. The second reason why I have him so on the low on the list here is because of the ability that is supposed to be the identity of this character, which is the anti-rising rush mechanic. This is the only character in the game that does this. And so what I think they were probably trying to do with this mechanic is to use this character as an experiment to see how oppressive this would be. And so I'll just read this and then I'll explain how this works. So while this character is on standby and there are 3 enemy battle members remaining, stops an enemy's rising rush and activates a support action if you lose the wager activates once. Deals major impact damage when support action activates, and then you can't kill an enemy with the damage. So basically what this means is if you have if the enemy, so if you are using Tien and the enemy rising rushes you, and then a character on your team that is not Tien takes the rising rush, and then you don't guess the enemy, which is a lot of conditions, then Tien will actually stop the rising rush from happening and deal damage to the enemy with his tri-beam. So it is, in theory, a very powerful ability. And I think a lot of the times, if you're running Tien, the enemy will intentionally just not rush, right? So I think that in itself is very strong. But I remember trying to record my showcase for this character, and it's like, dude, I had to record for like 45 minutes just to get this to activate one time. It was not easy to get. Enemies are able to play around this pretty easily, because guess what? When the enemy rising rushes, they can decide whether or not they want to rush or not. They're in control of when they press their own rising rush button. So if Tien is not on the battlefield and the enemy has 3 members left, guess what they're going to do? They're just not going to rush, and they're going to save it for later. So that's just, yeah, it's not a very strong mechanic for now. I feel like they can tweak this in certain ways to make it more powerful down the line if they decide to give this to other characters in the future. And then something else to mention as well is that when this character initially released, which is what this video is about, it's about characters that initially released, they, for some reason, like had an issue with this unit to where this mechanic was like not in the game. So if you guys actually go back and look at my initial showcase for this Blue Tien, he actually didn't have this portion of his unique ability. This top portion of his unique ability did not even exist in the game. There was some bug or some problem that they were experiencing with this character, and he didn't have this portion of his passive. He was missing like the main part of the character that actually made him good. So I think when you combine the fact that this is actually, it's okay, but it's not crazy good, with the fact that it wasn't even in the game yet, then we have the fact that he has no tags and he's a super heavily blast oriented character. Like this guy's just never, I don't feel like he's ever going to be used, so never. So Tien at number 3. Let's move on to number 2. Alrighty, coming in at number 2 on 2022's worst summonable sparking list is going to be Gamma 2. This kind of sucks a lot because Gamma 2 was one of my favorite characters from the Dragon Ball Super superhero movie. Now, this guy released a significant amount of time before the movie came out. So this guy was based off of the trailer, like all his animations are from the trailer. And they sort of, I think Legends released this character alongside Gamma 1 as sort of like ways to hype the community up for the release of the movie, but it was like 2 months before the movie actually came out where these guys released. So yeah, and the one thing I'll say as well is, like, I think when you compare this character to Gamma 1 is just so much better. It's like not even close. So yeah, there's a lot of unfortunate things we could talk about for this character. The first thing I'll mention is he's on 2 different teams. He's on androids and movies. His only actual tag is androids though. The one thing they did for this character is very strange, is they like gave him a restriction to be used alongside another android battle member, which of course is supposed to be, you know, sort of coercing you into using him next to Gamma 1, which makes sense that you'd want to use Gamma 1 next to Gamma 2. But the main problem with that is, where does this guy fit in? Like, if you're using him on movies, do you really have the option to use this character next to another android character? And the answer is no. Like, are you using this character over Ultra Super Gogeta? No. Are you using this character over Revival Gohan? No. So if you're using this character as the 3rd unit on your team, you're not getting this portion of his unique ability. Obviously, I'm talking about when he released, right? Those are the characters you'd easily prioritize over this character, was Revival Gohan and Ultra Super Gogeta for movies. And then in terms of the Android team, are you prioritizing this character over Android 17 and 18? No. Are you prioritizing this character over LF Perfect Cell? No. Are you prioritizing this character over Gamma 1? No. So, like, where are you using him? Where does this guy get use? There's no team where I feel like this character actually fits on. And he's not doing that much either. I mean, he's getting 90% damage, 40% reduced damage received, which is actually really bad. 15 to special move costs is fine. Nullifying abnormal conditions is fine, but it's not like anything that you're writing home about. Here's where this character is supposed to be good. He's supposed to do a lot of damage and then make your enemies switch, because once the enemy switches, this guy grabs 20 ki. He gains minus 30% enemy sustained damage cut. He's getting critical rate, and he's giving the whole enemy team debuffs, which is good. Like, this ability is really good for a character that's designed to be hitting very, very hard. The only problem is, if you don't have the green card popped, which gives him nullification for 5 counts for cover change, guess what happens a lot of times when the enemy switches characters? This guy gets cover changed, right? And then he can't continue the combo. So this becomes not that great. His blue card supposedly is supposed to be the hard-hitting thing that he does. He, on main ability, draws a blue card. He gets extra damage from the blue card. His blue card gives him extra critical damage, plus he's getting crit chance from the main ability. So he's supposed to be hitting really hard with his blue card. But I remember when I was doing this guy's showcases, like, his blue card didn't really hit that hard. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, why am I comboing with this character when I could be comboing with like 17 and 18 or LF Cell or Ultra Super Gogeta or pretty much any other character that belonged to this guy's team? So I literally don't have any reason to use this guy on any team, especially when he first dropped. Like, there was no reason to really put this guy on any team. So just a really unfortunate spot for one of my favorite characters from the new movie. I wish they would have done this guy more justice, but I definitely anticipate them giving us a new version of Gamma 2 in the future, especially with what happened in the movie in terms of his big attack and his big moment that is not represented in the game yet. So hopefully they'll do that version of this character justice, but the initial version, definitely not good. Coming in at number 1 of the worst summonable sparkings of 2022, we have the transforming blue Vegeta. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably agree with this guy being the worst summonable sparking of the year. This is a character that actually released during the anniversary on the same banner alongside LF Ultra Instinct Goku. This guy's just straight up terrible. I don't even remember the last time we received a character this bad. This guy is actually in contention for like one of the worst sparkings ever released in the history of this game. I think this guy is legitimately on the level of Red Pycon, of Blue Bootanks. Like, those levels of character, like Blue Bootanks, I don't think will ever be topped, because like he was so bad that I think like he was worse than pretty much every single free-to-play character we received that year, which is literally ridiculous. I don't think this guy was worse than Blue Bootang Summer Release. I think he was actually able to do something, but he was really bad. This character had probably one of the worst transformation conditions in the game, because almost every single time they like lock a main ability like this, like here, let's just read this. This character's main ability will be sealed from battle start until one of the following conditions is met. Anytime you see this, main ability will be sealed, you already know you're in for a one hell of a ride. Own remaining health is 50% or below after an enemy attack is over, and 50 timer counts have elapsed. So here is the way that they envisioned this would go. What would happen is this guy would get comboed to below 50% HP, and upon that happening, he actually activates this ability down here at the bottom, applies the following effects to enemy if own health is 50% or below. Reduces ki by 100, destroy all cards, activates once. So that's clearly what this character was meant to do. And then after that, the combo would be over because they have no ki and they have no cards. And then that would unlock your main ability. You would go ahead and transform and you'd heal up to 100% HP, and then all that stuff would happen. So that's the way that they envisioned this would go, right? Seems logical. However, what usually happened was this character, number one, just got one shot from full HP and he didn't have a chance to do anything. Or number two, this activated down here, and then guess what? The enemy would just pop their main ability and kill him. Right? I mean, you destroying all their cards and all their ki is cool until they pop their main ability, grab enough ki to use their ultimate, which they draw from their main ability, and then kill you. Right? That is usually how this went down. And so typically the way that you would have to use this character, at least the way that I used him when he was brand new, because I had to, I forced myself to do showcases on this character, was you would wait for an enemy to use like an ultimate or a blue card, and then you would switch in intentionally so this character could get below 50% HP, and then you could transform. Or I actually found that I think more often than not, the transformation occurred on this character because of 50 timer counts elapsing. So the elapsion of the 50 timer counts definitely happened way more often than him actually getting below 50% HP, because more often than not, you were just dead. When this guy got touched, you probably were dead. So just a really bad unit. And it's like, it's not like if you transform with him, he was that good. Like he was still really, really bad. He had like no ways to get cover null. He had card draw speed, but it's like every unit has card draw speed now. He wasn't able to really tank at all. He didn't do that much damage. Like he didn't really provide anything to the team. He had timer count manipulation, which was okay. So that in combination with card draw speed, you could sort of like stall the game a little bit with his transformation, but the payoff of how difficult it was to actually get that transformation definitely wasn't at the level where it needed to be, and this guy just fell short massively of a decent spot, which is sad because you take a look at like the Universe Survival Saga team and or the God Key team at the time when this guy released next to UI Goku. Like the team could have been really good if this guy actually was usable, but unfortunately he was just awful. So number one on the list is transforming Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta, and that's going to round out the top 5 worst summonable Sparkings of 2022. Just to quickly recap the list, at number 5 we have the green Kaioken Goku, number 4 we have LF Bardock, number 3 we have Blue Tien, number 2 we have Gamma 2, and then number 1 we have this transforming Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta. Let me know down below if you guys agree or disagree with different placements on this list. Hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, I hope you guys have a good day.